Hello, today we're going to do a bit of fine tweaking on this Sony TV. What's the model number, Scott?
KV-28FX65U.
Right, a lot of these settings will apply to other TVs from Sony of the same vintage. There are secret menus in this and you can find out some information about them on my website that I generated many years ago when I bought a TV identical to this. So we're going to see if we can fine tweak the focus and maybe a little bit of the geometry on this TV. Right, let's get stuck in. Now there is a certain enthusiasm for CRT TVs of this sort of vintage, and in particular this model, because this was probably the absolute pinnacle of CRT TV sets. Why? Because it's 100 Hz and it's a Sony, so it's always good, and this is a 28-inch, and I chose 28-inch for a reason. The 32-inch didn't have anything like the quality of focus and convergence you could get out of these 28-inch ones. But they only had about 2 minutes or so in the factory to set them up. And this one's, of course, aged slightly as well, so we can improve on this. And though that's a very good picture already, we can make it even better. Let's get stuck in by reading the instructions on my own website. What do I do, Scott?
To enter service mode, there is the easy way or the hard way. The hard way is to switch off the main switch, then press channel up and down simultaneously on the top of the set. Then, whilst holding these, switch on the mains power.
Do you know what? I think that applies to the FX60 model, the one before this. Let's go for the other version, which uses remote control.
Switch the set to standby.
Switch it to standby, so I'll use remote for that.
Press these keys in sequence on the remote control. I plus.
Right, I plus. I see which one that is. Yes, that's up there.
5. Volume up.
Right.
Teletext off.
Which is the teletext off button?
Beneath the mute button.
But that might not apply to that particular remote. So I think it's going to be that one. So it's I5 volume up and then the teletext button. That might have done it. What comes up, Scott?
Now TT will appear. Press menu twice.
No, TT hasn't appeared, so I've not got that quite right. All right, we have to try again.
So I plus.
Yes.
5.
5.
Volume up. Teletext.
And teletext. Thought that's what I did. I plus 5 volume up teletext in sequence, in that sequence.
Yeah, I plus 5 volume up teletext off. That's the order you press them.
Yeah, I definitely pressed the right buttons.
Let me see.
I went I plus 5 volume up teletext. And that is the teletext button, because if I press it now, it says no teletext available.
Well, it specifically says on here teletext off.
Oh, maybe it's that one.
So yeah, it's probably that one.
Ah. Okay, let's try that.
So, I plus 5 volume up teletext off.
TT.
TT will appear.
Yes.
Press menu twice.
Yes.
The same procedures applied to the blah 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 models, but the keys are laid out in slightly different positions. It just...
Right, so we should be in...
You should be in now because it just comes out with a bunch of stuff about your set.
Off. Right.
It'd be easier to enter a menu, wouldn't you?
No, these look like the consumer things. TT. Here we go. I pressed the menu button too fast. Okay, here we go. Now we're in the secret menu, Scott. I don't think I provided any more information on what the menus were, did I?
No, you...
Right.
Yeah.
On your head be it. So we really want to see if we can fine tweak the focus, in particular, the corner focus. So let's go through. We do reset devices. We don't want to do that, do we? No. That would, I think, reset all the settings to factory setting, which we really don't want to do. Right, here we go. We might play with some of these later, but a lot of this is right. But dynamic convergence is one you can sometimes improve if, for example, you've got colours splitting. I mean, there's a tiny hint of it here, but it's so small that'll be well within what's acceptable. Let's deflection. Where is the focus? So here are all the scary settings. You really don't want to mess this up. You can trash the TV. Sub-bright you might want to adjust if, for example, your blacks are a murky grey colour. You've got red, green and blue cut-offs if, for example, your blacks have got a cast to them. We've been right around the loop. So most of these to do with colour and brightness. If your bright colours aren't correct, if your whites are sort of pink, you might turn down the red drive, for example. But I'm not seeing, let's have a look, deflection. This would be where you can adjust pincushion distortion, which gets you this vertical, nice and vertical, as it is pretty good. Pin amp, that's a pincushion distortion correction. Trapezium, which alters the straightness of the picture. Are you seeing one for edge focus? I haven't seen one yet.
Are they not ordered in like alphabetical?
There is external deflection, might it be in there? Focus phase. Right, so the present number is 90. Let's adjust that slightly and see if things get better or worse. So if it's on 90, oops, pressed the wrong button. Enter. Right, here we are. It's set to 90. So we can see on this test card, which I'm playing from a DVD player, we can see what our performance is. I mean, the focus in the centre is perfect. It's just these edges I'd like to improve. So if I wind that up, what are we seeing change, if anything?
That was changing.
Hmm?
That was changing.
What's changing, do you think? Is it sharpening the edges?
Yeah, the edges are changing at least. I don't know.
The centre's staying good.
Yeah, but the edges are changing.
So we're down to 59, 60. I'm just trying to sharpen up around here. You can convince yourself that things are changing and you're not really sure if they are. Oh, that's tightening up now.
No, it definitely is changing.
That's tightening up, isn't it? There's no two ways about it. It's doing the edges. It's not doing so much the corners. That may just be beyond what it can adjust. Let's make sure we don't lose convergence down here. Right, go back to 90 and see if we can definitely see a difference. Of course, if I leave my finger on the edge. Yeah, it's definitely a difference, isn't there? Between that, can you look at this, Scott, and agree? Between that, I've got it set to very low number, right? Look how thick that line is, yes? And if I take the number higher, that line is thinning, isn't it? Thinning and thinning and thinning. Do you agree?
Yes.
I'm not making that up, am I?
I don't know, now I have to...
Now it may be going back the other way, yeah?
Also, just looking at this image is giving me a headache.
I know. So I reckon around about 120 something is best. Let me look at the other side. It seems to make very little difference to that edge. I think around about 130. We'll leave it at 130. So that's tightened up these a little bit. So if I take that number down, that gets fat. I take it up and it thins. I can see it pulling away from my finger. 120, I reckon, actually. Okay, so we'll store that. Right, so that's been stored as 120. I can show you a tiny weakness in this TV. Look at this, Scott. To the right of these figures that are generated within the TV, there's a faint negative image of those numbers. That means there's a reflection of the signal being generated from the TV's own onboard computers out to the drive circuits. And the previous model of this, the FX60, didn't have that. So Sony were obviously cheaping out somewhere. Maybe the best TV in the world was the FX60, the model before this. But that is extremely faint. Most people in normal use are never going to see that. Right, we've got rotation. We certainly don't want to adjust that. Horizontal linearity, they're all good. So we'll leave those alone. So if you wanted, you could adjust convergence. Let me show you some of the convergence settings. So here you've got dynamic and static convergence. No, it's all dynamic, I should say, where you can fine tweak to make sure that all your colours land on each other. So, Scott, if you look at these squares here, they've got perfect white lines, but towards the corners you can sometimes find that they split slightly into red, green, blue, or red, white, blue, because the green's in the middle. And that's what they call dynamic convergence error. And you can, if it was out in the same amount on the whole screen, it's a static error. And a small amount like that in the edges is a dynamic convergence error. But this is so good that there's no point fiddling with any of these settings on this TV. If you attempt to do so, you make it worse, not better.
Yeah, I can see, like, over here, like a
little red tinge there.
Red tinge on the edge.
So, for example, where would that be? I mean, we can have a quick look, but I think we'll not make that any better. Oh, look, it does have the static convergence in here, vertical and horizontal static. Horizontal amplifier, red. So it's presently 36, okay? It only goes up to 64. And let's see if when it's scanning through that, can you see a difference?
What am I supposed to be looking for?
Any of these lines, I can't say it's shifting at all.
I don't think anything's changing.
No. I'm not seeing any shift in that at all as we're scanning through those 64 numbers. I'm finding that very surprising.
So what's it supposed to be changing?
The reds should have been moving in the corners.
Yeah, no, that's not happening.
But they didn't, no. I put it back to 36. Okay, so that was actually, wasn't, that was horizontal amp, not left, red, that was right. But I don't know why it didn't change anything. Let's have a look at one more setting. Top pin cushion correction. So it's presently set to 33. Look at the TV. See if you can see anything change when I move this around from 33 at the top of the picture. Are we having another case of nothing seems to be changing?
What I find weird is some of the lines like have no red tinge and some do.
Well, that's because there's a tiny static convergence error. The thing is, all CRT televisions have small convergence errors.
I feel like when you're not looking at like this test card, you probably wouldn't notice it that much.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
you have this kind of built so you can see
That's
the
making
errors.
it especially bad, yes. And most TVs have these sort of features built in. It's less obvious on this one, but still, you've got these lines here around the edges for looking at those.
But on that image, for example, it's much less obvious than it was on the one before.
Here's another really important setting thing we can check here. I'll get out of the menu for a minute. So red, green and blue, we need perfect purity, which means it's perfectly red. There's no green splodges. And we'll look at green and blue. That's what they call purity, to make sure that the colours are perfectly uniform on the screen, and red is always the hardest. These make sure that the correct colours land in the correct place. That's a very rough version of that. And you can see several here. We've got from white to black, and you check that all the colours in between are grey. If there's any colour tint in there, you can change the colour amplifier and cut-off points on these service remotes. So all these different test cards have a lot of these features built in. Convergence, that's to look at the bandwidth, the grayscale there, the correct colours. And some test cards have a circle in the middle. That would be a circle on a 4x3 TV. This one, well, I don't think this is set up properly, this test card, but that's supposed to be a circle. It actually looks a bit squashed that way. It's probably the test card's not been represented properly.
I mean, on like the left, you have more.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Than on the right. And,
yeah. Very often, though, these are more or less off the screen. Right, we'll exit the menus. I think we just switch the TV off to exit the test mode altogether. Maybe I'll switch it off with the power switch. And we're back to normal operation. So that, I hope, has shown you some of the secret service menus you can get into on the Sony TVs. Now, this particular TV, complete with its fantastic stand, which is in near Plymouth in Devon, is available for sale right now. So let me know if you'd be interested in buying this. We want it to go to a good home, somebody appreciate a TV of this quality. Gamers often love these, prefer a CRT to a flat panel. Right, I'll do plenty more content on audio and video technology in the near future. Bye for now.